on video 5 now, and before I go on to what happened when the school cut the child's hair, I'd like to go back to in the paediatric history. When it was first discovered that the child seemed to have been abused, it was reported to the police, we remember, and they took over a week to have the child examined by a doctor that they claimed to be a paediatrician, but through the name, and I searched records, it shows that he's just a general GP. He was actually the GP for the mother throughout her life. He examined the child, and apparently he wrote in his report that there was no abnormalities. But the child was still complaining of pain, and the skin continued to stay discoloured. So when the child was returned to the mother, because the child was complaining of pain, the mother took her to a local GP. He was okay, and he said he would refer her on to a paediatrician to have an examination. This he did, but due to the threats to the mother's life and so forth, and having to move into my house and that upheaval, she actually missed the appointment with that paediatrician. So once she'd moved into my house, in November 2002, she took her to my GP, who examined her. Now, when that GP examined the child, she saw the skin discoloration in the vaginal area and actually was disgusted and looked disgusted and horrified of what she saw. She said, she would refer her to a paediatrician and have the child examined. But this appointment never happened. It never happened, and this was in November, as I say, 2002. So in 2003, by March, no appointment had arrived. So the mother wrote to the GP asking where was the appointment, and she had to write several times, and then eventually the GP wrote back and said that an appointment would arrive shortly. Now, in 2003 also, we were forced to move again from my premises to a new home. We moved to a new home in May. The paediatric examination was for June, which we attended. When we attended, the doctor had strange ways of examining, if we call it strange. He put his hands up the child's T-shirt and started tickling her chest area. And when the mother objected, he said, no, he was just checking her heart. He then examined the child just by looking at the area, and on observation said, oh, she needs to be examined by a paediatrician. We sat down with him. He wrote in his notes she had hypopigmentation, and he said she needs to be, as I say, examined by a paediatrician, to which I responded, but I thought you was a paediatrician. And he said, yes, but she needs a paediatrician that specialises in examining sexual abuse. So we accepted this. He then told us, oh, the police and social services may be involved, and would we be prepared for that? And we said yes. After this, I was a bit perplexed by this, that he's a paediatrician, but he can't examine the child. And I phoned the medical council and asked, was there a specialist in examining for sexual abuse? And they said, no, there was no such profession. After this appointment in our new house is when the police came regarding me going to get the lollies, and the social services came in the back of that, and then the child started school in September. Still no appointment came for the paediatric examination. Then in October, after the haircutting incident that we had to take the child out of the school, the police came, well, it was a sergeant with a social worker asking questions of what the mother had said about the paedophile ring, but she said she would need a lawyer. After this visit from police, an appointment came for the child. But the appointment was not for a paediatrician. There was no mention of paediatrician on the appointment. It said that she had an appointment for a neuro department. So we felt, no, the child doesn't need neuro examination, and there was no indication that this was a paediatrician. So the mother wrote back to the original paediatrician and said, you know, I think you've referred us to the wrong place, so could you please refer us to the right one? No appointment came for another paediatrician, and in December we managed to find a lawyer that would take on the case. The next day, the social services called an initial case conference. No explanation of why they were calling the conference, and so we had the lawyer so mother was willing to answer any questions, put together a statement explaining the whole case history regarding the child to submit to that initial case conference, because we wasn't aware of what the case conference was being held for, and we knew that the boroughs hadn't examined the child properly, and therefore they may not have written correct notes in their files that were passed on to this new borough opening up this case. We knew there was a lack of interest in what the child was claiming regarding the abuse, and we also, in that statement, mother added the issues of black magic possibly being involved because of the chain around the child's waist and the cutting of hair and nails that was continuing to happen. We considered that maybe after seeing the statement and understanding the case that the child might get an examination, but at the case conference they made it quite clear that this wasn't going to be the case. They claimed that the child had been examined twice already by paediatricians, and they wasn't prepared to have the child examined anymore because they felt to examine the child would be too intrusive. Regarding the paediatrician that had examined her earlier that year, who did state that in his notes that there was hyperpigmentation, they had no record of this doctor's examination appointment, and apparently the child's medical files hadn't been passed on to our new doctor in our new borough, so they couldn't check anything. Even with a lawyer present at this case conference, they seemed to not be listening to what we were saying. The words were just going over their head, and they claimed that they felt the children may be at risk of emotional abuse from us because of what we were claiming, and so they felt that on them grounds they would put the children on the register for being at risk of emotional abuse. There was only one professional present that actually objected and said no, she didn't feel that they had met the threshold, and this was a black police officer. But she said that she would agree to putting them on the register in the interest of working together, which was a policy that was put together at the time for all professionals to work together in the interest of the child. On leaving that conference, the police officer turned to us and said, oh, if there's any more issues around black magic, please let us know, and grinned nicely. The chair said that if we disagreed with the decision made at that conference, that we could actually appeal the decision. So this is what the mother did, and she wrote and appealed, but swiftly they wrote back and said no, they felt that the threshold had been reached, and so that was the end of the appeal. So it was obvious that we wasn't actually going to see any justice here, and therefore had to view what else could be done to bring attention to this injustice that was going on. The mother wrote to the Police Complaints Authority stating that social services and police were not really taking an interest in this case, and explaining the whole case really of what had happened and how professionals were behaving, and asking for them to do something about it. I also saw it as, well, I don't really know who else to tell what is going on, so I actually wrote a 3-page letter typed to Tony Blair, and I CC'd it to David Blunkett, who was the Home Office, I can't remember all the descriptions, and also I wrote to MI5, who CC'd the same letter. It detailed everything of the case and how professionals were not behaving professional, and we awaited the response. 2004 came, January 2004, and the responses started coming in from the letters sent out. Tony Blair had someone write back to me saying that even though my letter was 3 pages long, his letter was a 1-page, tiny little letter, saying it had been carefully noted. I don't really know what that's meant to mean, carefully noted. The Home Office, they wrote a 2-page letter back, quite a long letter, but in it, they didn't really relate to the issues that I'd written about. They just picked up on the phone tapping that I mentioned to the police when they knocked regarding the lollies. They stated the legal regulations allowed around interception, and that if anyone was aggrieved by this, they should complain to the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. MI5 wrote back and said the security service is responsible for protecting UK national security and is therefore unable to assist or be of assistance, blah, blah, blah. And if I believed that my communications was being illegally intercepted, that I may wish to contact my local police or write to the Investigatory Powers Tribunal at blah, 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 which I did. The letter that the mother sent to the Police Complaints Authority, well, that went round the houses. She received a letter back saying that it's been sent to the Serious Crime Squad. And then a letter saying that the commander for the county that we lived in would be contacting her soon. And then she received a letter from the local inspector at the local police station asking could she come in and see them, please. This she did. Before she went, she actually thought, right, well, she's going to be asked questions on why she said about the paedophile ring, so forth. And therefore, she wrote down her answers to them questions so that she would be able to give her full understanding of the situation. But when she got there, she was taken into a room with the inspector at the local police station, and also another police officer was present. The inspector actually told her, you've been causing quite a bit of trouble, and if you continue, you may end up being blamed for what's happened to the child yourself. And they did have no questions for her. She therefore handed the answers to the questions that she was expecting to receive. She handed those to the officer, to the inspector, and the inspector, as she said, didn't seem too pleased to have received them, and the other officer present, she said, seemed quite furious and looked angry. So the police didn't seem to be interested. The health visitor, apparently, because all we needed was for someone really to witness that the child's skin was a different colour, and that would show that there's something not right. Plus, really, they should be examining her for what the child was complaining of. But at a case meeting, we were told, no, the health visitor apparently couldn't actually have a look at the area. That wasn't allowed. And also, we said, oh, okay, we'll show the social worker. But the team manager smiled with glee, and so did the other social workers present, saying, no, that wouldn't be allowed. And if we were actually to do that, she would have the children taken away straight away. I suggested maybe we take a photo then, but she said no. That would also create. That's also not allowed, and they would take the children away for that. So they just carried on acting towards us like we was actually making it up, and because no one could actually verify what we were saying, and even the paediatrician who examined the child couldn't. They couldn't get his notes because they weren't in the medical files, because the medical files weren't at the doctor's. It seemed that they could just carry on saying, no, well, we're not going to examine her because there's nothing there, and therefore we were talking rubbish. Tony Blair, well, he'd carefully noted it. There was nothing he could do. David Blunkett, nothing. MI5, nothing. All services were involved, but they wasn't seemingly interested. Meanwhile, social services was to attend us every 2 weeks, health visitor every month. education a few times a year. It worked out that someone came nearly every week, well, supposed to come every week to visit us, which I felt was harassment, but they didn't feel it was harassment. But in truth, this was only really, I believe, as a threat, because they didn't actually come. Even though they said they could come to all his appointment, and we had to accept that they didn't come. It was like the anticipation of them coming seemed to have more power than actually arriving, because there was not actually anything going wrong in their home. In fact, the first social worker that they allocated to our case completed her first initial assessment without actually even seeing the children or the mother. So I don't know where she gathered the information from, but she did her assessment without the visit. When they did eventually visit, it was a different set of social workers, and they came in their first visit and asked, could they speak to the children alone? The mother refused. She said they could ask them any question they wanted in front of her, but they wasn't going to be speaking to her children alone. They said that they could take her to court for this, and she said, yes, okay, if you want to take me to court, you can, but you will not speak to my children alone. They never went to court. She never let them speak to the children alone. The social workers' visits were irregular, and, well, they never really had any interest in the children. They seemed only to want to provoke the mother to anger, misconstruing the words that she was saying, or just omitting everything that we'd said from their reports, and then claiming we weren't cooperating, and so forth. They always came in twos, except for once we did for a while have a social worker. They brought in a very qualified one from America, and she used to come on her own for a while. The incitement was done by patronising the mother, talking at cross purposes, insinuating that she's mentally ill. The health visitor had no interest in the child regarding the abuse, dismissing it as made up, and never asked the child about it. So to begin with, the mother did allow the child to be there, but when we saw that she showed no interest and she wasn't going to be able to examine the child's skin discoloration, the mother decided after the child was 5 that she had no legal obligation to allow the health visitor to see the child. So I used to take the child out, and the health visitor just came to visit the little boy. The health visitor again was like, oh, we could take this into a court. The mother said, okay, take it into a court, but I don't believe it's your legal right. Regarding the skin discoloration, to begin with, well, for about a year, the health visitor just wouldn't take on that she could have a skin discoloration. But then after about a year, she changed the tune a bit and said, oh, it's possibly just that vitiligo. It's nothing, to worry about. Well, it is something to worry about. It's quite a bad illness, actually. Education were told of the hair cutting in school. They heard it in the initial case conference, and they also read it in the statement submitted to that conference. At that initial case conference, the mother asked education for some reassurance that if it was to happen to the child again, that they would act on it. They didn't give any reassurance, so there was no alternative other than to home educate their children. So the education decided that they would have to do home visits to the children. Initially, this was done by the head of education, and also she had with her an educational welfare officer. The child, through her own choosing, said to that worker how in school they had cut her hair, and that's why she wasn't going to school. This went over the education welfare officer's head, and we didn't see that educational welfare officer anymore. Instead, she was replaced, and the head of education used to come with a head teacher from a local school. So both top employees, costing a fortune, really, to do their hours visit, were never had any concerns, were quite happy with the children's education. In fact, they said that they were advanced. Although they never took on the issue of the hair cutting, they had no interest in that, never discussed it. They did threaten court if the children didn't socialise enough. But then after that, stopped asking about their social activities. So all bodies that are supposed to be there to help didn't show any concerns with what we were claiming, and the mother continued to push for an examination of the child. And eventually social services at a meeting was, well, we can't see a way forward, we don't know what we can do, we can't go on indefinitely keeping you on the register, which we agreed to, but we said, well, if you have the child examined, that would be a way to resolve the issue, wouldn't it? But they said no to the mother, no, you can't threaten with blackmail like that. So I searched for a solution and found one, in fact, which I will go on in the next video, video 6, because this one's probably getting too long as it is. If you want to go further than I've got up to in the videos, I have done 3 blogs now, higherinsightblogspot.com, higherinsight2blogspot.com, and higherinsight3blogspot.com at the moment. I'm working as fast as I can, and bear with me. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.